Okay, let's unpack
Let's
this.
do it.
We're diving headfirst into, I think, a crisis of truth that is just silently undermining the entire commercial and medical operating system across the industry.
It is.
And frankly, it is driving your most talented people in the field completely insane.
It's a kind of systemic friction that, it exists entirely below the surface. You don't see it on the quarterly reports.
No.
Leadership sees the metrics, but the field team,
Yeah.
they live the daily reality of those metrics.
Yeah.
And that reality forces them to choose between their job and, well, the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you want to know the uncomfortable, unvarnished truth about what's really happening out there, you don't look at the glossy C-suite presentation.
No way.
You go to places like Reddit, specifically our medical science liaison trend. We saw a thread there recently that just lays the entire problem bare.
Oh, that quote. I mean, the quote that just jumped off the page, and it really needs to be said out loud, was from an MSL who openly admitted to just fabricating interaction numbers to hit their targets. They said, and I'm quoting here, "I'll report 2,000 interactions if that's what the C-suite morons want."
Wow. And that quote for us, that's our mission statement for this deep dive.
It has to be.
It shows that we are forcing highly skilled, highly paid scientific experts and sales pros to become, I guess, metric liars.
Yeah, that's what they are.
Because the systems, the processes, the measures we use, they are fundamentally broken proxies for what actually matters, for actual impact.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spend this time really understanding the anatomy of this crisis, looking at both medical and sales.
Right.
Then we'll look at the massive strategic risk this poses to leadership, and then critically, how we escape this spiral. How do we fix the underlying operating system with this idea called agentic orchestration?
Because that's the only way, at the end of the day, to get a true signal instead of all this noise.
Right.
So let's start with what we're calling the fake work epidemic. For medical science liaisons, for MSLs, the mandate should be clear.
Should be.
They're scientific peers. They're meant to be interpreting complex data, building relationships with key opinion leaders, supporting trials. Their value is the depth of their knowledge.
But structurally, the organization doesn't treat them that way. It treats them like machines dedicated to activity logging.
Yes. Organizations just default to counting things. We see these expectations, anywhere from 20 to 60, sometimes more interactions a month.
And demanding multiple insights per call.
Which are just. They're easy numbers to track, but they are disastrously poor proxies for real scientific impact.
And that misalignment, it creates this massive anxiety for the MSL on the ground.
You see it in the forums. MSLs constantly debating what even counts as an interaction. Is an email an interaction?
Right. What about the MPs, the PAs, the pharmacists, the people often doing the day-to-day patient care?
But the reporting system is so often just focused exclusively on MDs. So it creates this confusion about where they should be spending their really valuable time.
And that confusion gets compounded by compliance anxiety. When management pushes metrics that, they kind of hint at increasing product utilization, the MSL, whose entire job is non-promotional scientific exchange, they start feeling that pressure.
They know they have to hit the volume, but hitting the volume in a way that generates real insight, that takes time.
Time they don't have.
Exactly. So it forces them closer to that promotional boundary than anyone is comfortable with.
It's a total lose-lose situation. When you demand quantity over quality, people respond predictably.
They game the metrics to survive the performance review.
And the only real quality work, the handful of high-value conversations they really want to have, gets squeezed into the margins of their calendar.
And it's so hard to protect that time because their workload outside of the actual meeting is just, it's overwhelming.
It's admin creep in its purest form.
They're preparing custom decks. They're digging through 3 different BI tools just to understand an HCP's background.
Then writing up notes, updating multiple CRMs and reporting systems.
All of that is time stolen directly from the mission. It is the definition of fake work. And the story, if anything, is even worse on the sales side.
Oh, it is. Industry reports consistently show that sales reps spend a tiny minority of their time, sometimes as low as 30%, actually engaging with customers.
So 70% of their day is spent wrestling with technology instead of selling or providing value. Just think about that in terms of sheer labor cost.
It's staggering. They're bouncing between all these different logins.
The CRM, the content library, sample tracking, e-detailers, expenses.
And so often they're manually copying data from one system to the next because the tools were just never designed to talk to each other.
So they're forced to manage this incredibly fragmented, complex view of their own customer. They are fighting their tech every single step of the way.
Which brings us to the ultimate victim here,
The customer.
the HCP.
That's the hidden cost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, HCPs are complaining and loudly about getting disjointed, repetitive, and just shallow interactions.
The customer experience is fragmented because the company is fragmented. It's that simple.
They'll see a sales rep and an MSL from the very same company, and neither one seems to have any clue what the other person discussed.
And the HCP values continuity above all else. They just want depth, objectivity, consistency.
Follow through.
Follow through. They want someone to walk in and say, okay, here's where we left off on that trial data. Here's what's new for your patients, and here's that resource I promised you.
They care 0% about the number of calls logged in a CRM.
0. They care if the interaction respects their time and is actually relevant.
Okay, so that leads us to the next much bigger problem.
Yeah.
The leadership blind spot.
Yeah.
We've established the inputs are, let's be generous and say massaged.
Right. Gamed or even fabricated to hit these arbitrary targets.
So what's the consequence of all this garbage data for the leaders in commercial and medical strategy?
It means they're flying completely blind on a massive commercial investment.
Yeah.
I mean, leaders are responsible for multi-million-dollar decisions. Resource allocation, team sizes, training, the channel mix.
And they're making these huge decisions based on noise. Complete noise.
They're pouring hundreds of millions into their field teams, into digital platforms.
But they struggle to link that massive spend to any clear, defensible outcome.
Precisely. They can't defensively answer the most important strategic question. Did this sequence of engagements actually shift prescribing behavior in a guideline-concordant way?
Or did it improve adherence for a specific patient group?
The data lineage you'd need to prove that attribution is just.
Yeah.
It's broken. It's broken because the input layer was designed to measure activity, not impact.
So in the absence of those better, more defensible measures, they just fall back on the numbers they have.
The massage numbers. Call counts, event counts, webinar attendance.
So the system rewards activity, but the leaders are trying to measure strategic impact. And that gap, that's the blind spot that's costing the industry billions.
And the complexity they're facing is just accelerating. I mean, they're being asked to cover more therapeutic areas, manage this super complex hybrid mix of channels,
Virtual in-person portals.
and navigate this constantly increasing regulatory burden, all with smaller or, at best, steady headcounts.
So we're asking for exponential complexity, but we're trying to deliver it through a simple, linear, and broken engine.
That is the core of the problem. The current operating model, it relies on fragmented tools, manual handoffs, and reporting that is cobbled together with spreadsheets and human effort.
The spreadsheet glue.
The spreadsheet glue. It simply cannot handle this level of complexity and still deliver reliable data.
Okay, and this is where it gets really, really tricky from a compliance and a reputational risk perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When we tolerate a system where the metrics are pushing people to game the volume numbers, it's not just the quality of the sales data that goes down.
No. Our ability to detect genuine compliance risk degrades right along with it.
Absolutely. Think about a specific compliance headache. An MSL is planning an advisory board.
Okay.
They need to check the fair market value calculator, the FMV, to make sure the honoraria is compliant. They need to check the transfer of value tracker to make sure that HCP hasn't already received too much value this year.
And these are critical checks, but they're often done manually in separate, siloed systems.
Which means the risk is very real. If an MSL or a rep is stressed, rushing to hit a quota, and they bypass a manual check or they reference an outdated spreadsheet,
the organization is immediately exposed. You risk inappropriate payments, misclassified engagements ending up in public reports, or triggering an audit.
all because the system itself forced them into a risky manual workflow.
The irony is just, it's incredible. The basic activity data is faked to hit a volume target, but the compliance signals we derive from that same data are relied upon for critical risk management.
You can't trust either one.
You can't, and this is the moment we have to stop trying to optimize fragmentation and move to a unified architecture.
Which brings us to the actual fix.
Yeah.
Agentic orchestration. And I really need to stress this up front for everyone listening. This is not just another dashboard or a better chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about an architectural shift that unifies and coordinates the entire interaction space.
It's a critical distinction to make because the problem is fragmentation. The solution has to be unification and coordination. Conceptually, an orchestration layer has to do 4 things.
Okay.
It has to unify the single view of the HCP, It has to coordinate all the multi-channel touch points. It needs to embed compliance invisibly, and it has to shift the metrics toward outcomes.
Right now, the field team is manually jumping between all these different sources.
It's a nightmare.
CRM history, claims data, event logs, content platforms, publication databases, all just to build a coherent picture of the HCP before they even pick up the phone.
It's forensic work just to do your job.
And orchestration solves this by acting as the conductor for all that data. It pulls together every key signal prescribing patterns, digital behavior, channel preferences into one coherent, dynamic profile.
So the field team doesn't open 6 tools. They look at one trustworthy, living memory of the customer, and it's updated continuously.
And that coordination piece is so essential. It makes sure medical and sales aren't accidentally stepping on each other's toes.
Or worse, hitting the same HCP with the same material twice in a week.
Right. The HCP gets a logical, valued sequence of interactions, not just random corporate noise.
Now let's talk about the specific power of the agentic component. What separates this from just, basic workflow automation? It's the ability to do something called tool calling to get the hard truth.
Okay, that sounds pretty technical. Explain tool calling for the strategy leader who's asking, isn't this just another sophisticated AI trying to guess the answer?
That is the key difference. A traditional AI might try to guess the appropriate honorarium for an MSL engagement based on past data.
And that guess could lead to a compliance hallucination, a big one.
A very big one. Agentic orchestration doesn't guess. It acts like a highly intelligent conductor. It identifies the need for hard, deterministic data, and then it calls the systems that hold that data.
So it proactively queries the trusted source of record.
Precisely. If an MSL proposes an engagement that involves a payment, the orchestration layer immediately calls the FMV calculator system, pulls the current rate, calls the transfer value tracker, pulls the year-to-date total.
And then it uses its reasoning to synthesize all that and guide the MSL's decision.
It's integration on steroids.
And that real-time synthesis is what allows the compliance element to become, as you said, invisible.
Exactly. We call it invisible compliance because the system handles the complex rules for the human. Compliance shouldn't feel like a big red wall that's blocking every single interaction.
So agentic orchestration encodes all those rules, role boundaries, policy constraints, value thresholds as active real-time rules.
Yes, and for the person trying to get work done, it's not a binary yes or no.
It's more nuanced.
Far more nuanced. It continuously evaluates the proposed engagement. A low-risk one gets an immediate green light. Within policy, go for it. A more complex one might get an amber light. Conditionally acceptable, but here are the risk mitigation levers you need to pull.
And crucially, if it flags something as high risk, it doesn't just say no.
No, if the proposal pushes the boundaries, the agent actually suggests ways to de-risk it. Maybe it advises a lower fee or a different, less risky format, or it triggers an additional approval step that's necessary.
It makes the edge cases explicit, transparent, and traceable.
Which immediately addresses the field team's anxiety. They feel less like they're being policed and more like they have this trusted, risk-aware guide running interference for them in the background.
So if an engagement is recommended, they can trust it's aligned.
Right. And if they proceed with a conscious exception, say for some urgent clinical reason, the system ensures it's fully justified, traceable, and audited automatically.
And that audit trail must be invaluable for the compliance folks.
It records not just what happened, but why it happened. It shows where policy was followed and where the field consciously flexed with mitigation steps. You get a clear, traceable record of intent and action.
Okay, let's bring all this home. The narrative arc here is pretty clear. The root problem is not a lack of commitment from MSLs or sales reps. It's that our fragmented systems and broken metrics, they just don't reflect the complexity of their real high-value jobs.
We've built a world where these brilliant scientific and commercial professionals are measured by how well they fill out administrative boxes.
And that leads to garbage data for leadership and massive frustration for the HCPs they're supposed to be serving.
The only solution is to fix the operating system. We have to move beyond these raw activity metrics and provide a signal that leadership can actually trust.
The metric shift has to be away from raw counts and toward outcome-aligned measures.
We need to start measuring things like HCP reported usefulness or satisfaction with the whole engagement sequence.
The verifiable quality and actionability of the insights they generate.
And eventually, quantifiable proxy measures of impact on appropriate use or adherence. That's the only way to justify the massive investment in these expert teams.
And this kind of shift, it isn't about cutting headcount. It's not about cutting FTEs.
No, not at all.
It's about using the FTEs you already have, your most expensive and crucial resource, more intelligently, powered by an operating model that respects their expertise and, critically, respects the HCP's time.
And if we can achieve this orchestrated future, the focus shifts completely. Instead of leaders asking, so how many calls did your team log last month?
The new conversation is,
What new scientific or clinical impact did your team generate this month that measurably moved the needle? Now that is a strategic conversation worth having.
so think about the complexity, the compliance headaches that are bogging down your teams right now. If you could trade 6 fragmented manual tools for a single, trustworthy, coordinated agent that handles compliance invisibly,
And provides that living, unified view of the customer.
what would that free your best people up to actually do? That, I think, is the real measure of the agentic orchestration opportunity.